The starlit tapestry of the cosmos seldom bore witness to the calamities of its lesser inhabitants, but today, a singular tragedy had drawn its unblinking gaze to the quiet outskirts of the Zelphi sector. Here, orbiting a nondescript yellow star, was a world untouched by the cosmic rivalries, a blue-green planet named Trellis, home to a burgeoning human colony known for its lush forests and serene landscapes. On this day, the stillness was shattered by the sudden descent of a Galactic Empire warship. Its arrival was neither announced nor expected. A towering behemoth of metal and might, it cast a long shadow over Ebonwood, a small town nestled among ancient woods where the colonists had made their home. The commander of the vessel, a high-ranking officer named Krill Vantis, observed the town below with cold detachment. His orders were explicit and stemmed from the highest echelons of the Empire's command: locate the fugitive thought to be hiding among the humans and extract him, irrespective of the cost. As the Imperial troops descended, chaos ensued. The townsfolk, ill-equipped and unprepared, could only flee or cower. Among them was the Nara family, who had fled an earlier conflict in another sector, seeking peace on Trellis. They were close to the edge of town, almost to the safety of the dense forests, when tragedy struck. A misfired shot from an Imperial drone, intended for a fleeing figure mistaken for the fugitive, struck down young Eli Nara. The boy, with dreams of the stars and a knack for fixing old machinery, fell, his dreams extinguished in a blink. His mother, Ilara Nara, cradled him, her cries piercing the turmoil as the soldiers marched onward, indifferent. The news of the child's death spread like wildfire through the colony. What the Galactic Empire had failed to consider was that the humans of Trellis were not isolated. They were part of a network, a scattered but tight-knit community of colonies that spanned the stars. And they were not without their own means of retaliation. A meeting was hastily convened by the leaders of Trellis and its neighboring colonies. Among them was Kai Arlen, a former military tactician turned governor, who had long advocated for peace but understood the language of war all too well. "We cannot let this stand," Kai stated, his voice resolute amidst the sea of grim faces. "The Empire believes us to be soft, broken by our flight from war. They see our children as collateral in their games of power. We must disabuse them of this notion." The room agreed, but the path forward was fraught with peril. A direct confrontation was suicidal. The colonies possessed neither the firepower nor the numbers to stand against the might of the Galactic Empire. They needed another way, a way to strike without inviting annihilation. "We warn them," proposed Lynn Mara, a communications expert known for her unorthodox approaches. "Not a threat, but a promise. We show them that we can reach out and touch them, just as they have touched us." The plan was audacious. Using their skills in hacking and electronic warfare, they would infiltrate the Empire's communications network. Instead of a declaration of war, they would send a warning. It was a message meant to chill the spine of those who believed themselves untouchable. As the meeting adjourned, the technical teams got to work. They had to be quick, silent, and precise. Within hours, the message was ready, and through a series of relayed signals and hijacked transmissions, it was broadcast directly into the heart of the Galactic Empire's network. It was simple, stark, and impossible to trace. "Run!" In the Imperial Palace, the message caused immediate uproar. Security protocols were scrambled, fleets put on high alert, but no enemy came. It was a ghost threat that frayed nerves and stoked the fires of paranoia. Back on Trellis, as Ilara Nara laid her son to rest under the shade of an ebonwood tree, the first invisible salvo of a new kind of resistance had been launched. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake, one that would ripple across the stars for years to come. As the sun set over Trellis, casting long shadows and painting the sky with hues of fire, the colonists looked up, not with despair, but with a new resolve. The fight for their future had just begun. In the opulent chambers of the Imperial Council, the atmosphere was tense. The mysterious message had reached the highest levels of the Empire, sowing confusion and fear among its leaders. Admiral Voss, the stern-faced overseer of the Empire's military operations, stood before the Council, his expression grim. "We must consider the possibility of a widespread network of insurgents," Admiral Voss began, his voice echoing in the silent hall. This message, though vague, indicates a level of sophistication and access that we cannot ignore. Across the table, Minister Isla, responsible for the security of the Empire's vast network, frowned. Our systems are secure. This message was a fluke, an anomaly. It is impossible for a primitive group of colonists to breach our defenses without inside help. But it happened, Minister, Voss retorted sharply. We cannot afford to underestimate our enemy, no matter how insignificant they might seem. The council debated long into the night, with voices raised and tempers flaring. The conclusion was inevitable. The Empire would not run, it would strike back. Orders were dispatched to multiple sectors. Any hint of rebellion, any whisper of dissent among the colonies, was to be crushed without mercy. Back on Trellis, Kai Arlen and Lin Mara monitored the Empire's movements closely. Through their network of spies and hacked interfaces, they could see the tightening noose of Imperial ships and patrols. It was only a matter of time before they would have to face the full might of the Empire. Kai turned to his team, gathered in the dimly lit war room of the Trellis Command Center. They will come with everything they have, he said. Our message has made them cautious but also desperate. Lin nodded, her eyes scanning the screens displaying streams of data. We've poked the nest, and now the swarm is coming. We need to be ready to exploit every gap, every slight hesitation in their ranks. The preparations were swift and meticulous. The colonists fortified their positions, set up hidden bases in the dense forests and rugged mountains of Trellis, and expanded their surveillance and communication jammers. They trained every able person, preparing them for guerrilla warfare, knowing full well the conventional battle would be suicidal. Meanwhile, Alara Nara, her grief a constant shadow, joined the Resistance's medical team. The loss of her son had hardened her resolve. No more children should suffer as Eli did, she declared, her voice steady, her hands skilled and quick as she prepared medical supplies and trained others in emergency care. As the Empire's fleet approached, a silence fell over Trellis. The skies, once bustling with the light trails of ships and the laughter of children, were now a quiet frontier, bracing for the storm to come. In the depth of space, Admiral Voss's flagship, the Indomitable, led the Imperial fleet. His face was a mask of resolve, as the star map in front of him showed the last known positions of the rebel colonies. Engage the hyperdrives, he commanded. Set course for Trellis. It ends now. As the behemoth ships of the Galactic Empire blinked across the cosmos toward their target, the rebels of Trellis readied themselves. In their hearts, fear mingled with determination, for they knew the coming days would test them as never before. The message had been sent, the line drawn in the starlit sand, and the time for hiding was over. The battle for Trellis, for their rights and their lives, was about to begin. As the dark expanse of space near Trellis bristled with the energy signatures of the incoming Imperial fleet, Kai Arlen's voice crackled over the hidden communication networks linking the various resistance cells across the planet. Positions, everyone! Remember, stealth and speed are our allies. On the ground, the resistance fighters slipped through the dense forests and rugged terrains, using the natural world as their shield against the technological might of the Empire. They had laid traps, prepared ambush points, and now they waited, the quiet before the storm pulsing in their veins. Admiral Voss surveyed the approaching planet with a tactical eye. Begin orbital scans. I want every inch of these forests monitored. They think they can hide. They are mistaken, he declared, his voice a harsh command that left no room for dissent among his crew. In orbit, powerful scanners deployed from the fleet's lead ships, sending penetrating waves to map the surface below. However, the colonists, under the guidance of Lin Mara, had engineered electromagnetic disturbances. The scans returned fragmented and unreliable, clouding the Empire's view with ghost images and false leads. Meanwhile, Lin coordinated with her teams via secure lines. Now, she hissed, as the first Imperial dropships began their descent, their thrusters igniting the night. Activate the jammers! Suddenly, the technologically advanced HUDs and navigation systems aboard the Empire's ships flickered and failed, thrown into disarray by the sophisticated jamming devices hidden among the tree lines. The dropships lurched, pilots struggling to maintain control manually as their systems spat out conflicting data. Ground troops, led by Commander Drakes, a veteran of the Empire's many skirmishes, disembarked with caution. The darkness of the unfamiliar, hostile planet enveloped them. "Stay sharp," Drakes ordered, his voice low. "They're here. Somewhere." Ilara Nara, along with other medics, stayed behind the front lines, her heart pounding as she waited for the inevitable. Each second stretched long, filled with the distant sounds of branches breaking under the weight of armored troops. The first engagement was swift and brutal. An Imperial patrol stumbled into a minefield laid by the Resistance. Explosions tore through the quiet night, sending shockwaves through both the Imperial forces and the rebel fighters. The battle had truly begun. Using the chaos, Kai led a small team in a guerrilla attack, hitting a disoriented squad from the shadows, their silent weapons and quick movements making them ghosts in the night. They retrieved datapads, weapons, and dragged a wounded Imperial officer back to their hidden base for interrogation. Back in orbit, frustration mounted for Admiral Voss. "Dispatch more troops. I want boots on the ground, sweep every inch," he barked, unaware that each order played into the hands of the waiting rebels. The Resistance used the heavily forested areas to their advantage, moving through underground tunnels and camouflaged paths, striking quickly and retreating into the shadows before the Empire could regroup and respond effectively. As the sun rose over Trellis, it cast light on the devastation of the night's battles. Craters and scorched earth marked the once pristine landscapes, and both sides had suffered losses. Yet the resolve of the colonists remained unbroken. Their actions had proven they could stand against the giants. In her field camp, Ilara treated the wounded, her hands steady but her eyes haunted. She saved lives, both human and alien, her mission clear in her mind, to fight not just for revenge, but for a future where no more innocent blood would be spilled. As the day ended, the Resistance prepared for the next wave, knowing the Empire would come at them with increased fury. They were ready to defend their home. The Resistance on Trellis grew bolder with each skirmish. The Galactic Empire, despite its vast resources and seasoned warriors, found itself grappling with an enemy that refused to engage on predictable terms. Kai Arlen, analyzing every encounter, adapted his strategies with surgical precision. "Focus on their supply lines," Kai instructed his lieutenants during a strategy session held in a camouflaged bunker deep within the Heartwood forest. "If we cut them off, we starve them out, make them desperate." Simultaneously, in the cold corridors of his flagship, Admiral Voss received troubling reports. "Supply ship Convoy Delta has been hit, sir. We've lost vital munitions and medical supplies," reported his aide, a young officer whose face was pale with the strain of continuous battle. "Redirect additional fleets to secure the supply routes," Voss commanded, his jaw set in frustration. The war was dragging longer than expected, and the High Command was growing impatient for results. On Trellis, the Resistance celebrated small victories. They had successfully ambushed a supply convoy, seizing much-needed supplies and weapons. Among the rebels, spirits were lifted, songs of old Earth and new Trellis, echoing through hidden encampments, blending defiance with hope. In one such camp, Ilara Nara sat with her team, sharing stories of those they'd lost and those they'd saved. Her role had expanded. She was now also training new recruits in basic first aid, ensuring that as many fighters as possible could tend to wounds in the field. The conflict continued to escalate, with the Empire employing more destructive tactics. They began to burn out large areas of the forest, attempting to flush out the rebels with fire. But the colonists were one step ahead, having prepared underground shelters and new, more secretive routes through the terrain. Lin Mara, working tirelessly, managed to hack into the Empire's communication channels once more. "We've intercepted plans for a major offensive," she informed Kai. "They're getting desperate and more dangerous." Armed with this knowledge, Kai planned a daring counteroffensive. As Imperial forces gathered for a strike designed to be the death blow to the Resistance, the rebels preempted their attack. Under the cover of night, using the smoke from the fires as cover, the Resistance moved in small, agile teams. They struck at the Imperial encampment, sowing chaos and confusion, sabotaging equipment, and stealing crucial data. As dawn broke, the Imperial camp was in disarray. Many of their vehicles were disabled, and their command structure was temporarily crippled by the loss of communication devices. The rebels retreated back to the safety of their forest havens, leaving behind a message scrawled on the remains of a burned-out tank. Trellis stands. Admiral Voss, standing amidst the wreckage of his forward base, clenched his fists. "Increase aerial surveillance and prepare for a full-scale ground assault," he ordered, his voice cold with fury. The loss was a slap to the face of the mighty empire, and he vowed to retaliate with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, the rebels, though weary, were uplifted by their successful raid. They knew each victory brought with it harsher reprisals, but it also brought them closer to an eventual, hoped-for peace. They fortified their positions, treated their wounded, and prepared for the next encounter, knowing each moment of freedom was paid for in blood. As both sides regrouped, the stars above Trellis bore silent witness to the unfolding human drama, a testament to the resilience and tenacity of those fighting for their right to exist in the...
As the conflict on Trellis intensified, Admiral Voss faced mounting pressure from the Galactic Empire's Central Command. His superiors demanded swift resolution, their patience wearing thin with each report of setbacks. "We need a decisive victory, Voss," the High Commander's hologram stated, its flickering image casting stark shadows in the dimly lit war room. "End this insurrection, or we will find someone who can." Determined to crush the resistance, Voss ordered a massive deployment of ground troops, accompanied by aerial drones designed for both surveillance and combat. These drones swept across the forests and valleys of Trellis, their sensors fine-tuned to detect any sign of rebel activity. On the ground, the rebels, led by Kai Arlen, remained vigilant and adaptive. With each Imperial tactic, they countered with ingenuity born of necessity. Lin Mara enhanced their jamming devices, creating false signals and echoes to mislead the drones and disrupt their communications. "Let's turn their strength into their weakness," Lin proposed during a tactical meeting. "Use their reliance on technology against them." Taking her advice, the resistance began deploying decoys, simple heat sources rigged to mimic human activity. As drones diverted to investigate these false leads, small teams of rebels executed hit-and-run attacks on less defended targets, seizing supplies and gaining valuable information. In these skirmishes, Ilara Nara's role became increasingly critical. The field hospital she managed swelled with both wounded rebels and captured Imperial soldiers, whom she treated with the same level of care. Her compassion did not go unnoticed, sowing seeds of doubt among the ranks of the captured soldiers. "Is this what we are fighting against?" one young Imperial soldier murmured as Ilara tended to his wounds, his tone a mix of confusion and realization. Meanwhile, Admiral Voss, observing the Resistance's resilience and adaptability, decided on a more ruthless strategy. He ordered the deployment of heavy artillery, aiming to obliterate the rebels' suspected strongholds without regard for the collateral damage to the planet or its civilian population. The first of these bombardments razed entire sections of the forest, the ancient trees toppling like matchsticks under the relentless assault. The rebels suffered casualties, their hidden bases compromised. Yet, even in these moments of despair, their resolve did not waver. Kai Arlen surveyed the devastation with a heavy heart, but a clear mind. "We regroup and evolve. This war isn't just fought with weapons, but with hearts and minds," he asserted, his voice resonant with determination as he addressed his weary but unwavering fighters. Responding to the escalated threat, the rebels dug deeper into the rugged terrain of Trellis, utilizing natural cave systems and constructing more sophisticated underground networks. They adapted their tactics, avoiding large gatherings and spreading out in smaller, mobile units that could strike quickly and vanish into the landscape. As the Empire's forces bulldozed their way through the wilderness, the environmental toll became impossible to ignore. News of the devastation leaked out, reaching other systems and sparking outrage among other colonies and even within some sectors of the Empire itself. Public sentiment began to shift, with protests erupting on various planets, demanding an end to the destruction on Trellis. These protests grew, gaining momentum, turning the tide of public opinion against the Empire's aggressive policies. Admiral Voss, now grappling with a two-front war, one against the rebels on Trellis and another against rising dissent within the Empire, faced an unprecedented challenge. His resolve hardened, yet a creeping doubt shadowed his thoughts, prompted by the growing resistance not just on a distant planet, but within his own ranks.
Pressure mounted within the Galactic Empire as word of the heavy-handed tactics employed on Trellis reached more distant corners of its vast territory. On peaceful planets and bustling space stations, citizens began questioning the necessity and morality of such brutal crackdowns. In shadowed alleys and over encrypted channels, people spoke of the Trellis resistance as a beacon of hope against Imperial overreach. Admiral Voss, aware of the growing dissent, tightened security protocols across his fleet and increased surveillance on his own troops. Loyalty was paramount, and he could not afford any breach or betrayal at this critical juncture. Trust must be earned even among our ranks, he confided in his closest advisors, his voice a low rumble of concern. Back on Trellis, Kai Arlen seized upon the shifting tides. Our struggle is gaining attention. We must amplify our message, make it clear we fight not just for ourselves but for all under the yoke of tyranny, he declared, rallying his commanders. They planned a series of broadcasts detailing the ecological devastation and the human cost of the ongoing conflict to be sent across the network to sympathetic listeners. Lynn Mara worked tirelessly, her fingers dancing over keyboards as she hacked into satellite feeds to transmit images of razed forests and smoldering ruins. "Let the galaxy see what is done in the name of order," she said, a steely edge to her voice. In one audacious move, a broadcast featuring Alara Nara went viral. She stood amidst the ruins of what once was a vibrant forest, now reduced to ash and char. "This is the price of silence," she stated, her eyes steady on the camera, her voice resonant with controlled fury. The video spread like wildfire, igniting debates and protests across numerous systems. Simultaneously, the resistance intensified their guerrilla tactics. They targeted key infrastructure, not to destroy, but to disrupt. Communication arrays, orbital docks, and supply depots. Each strike was carefully calculated to avoid casualties, focusing instead on crippling the logistical capabilities of the Imperial forces stationed on Trellis. Admiral Voss responded with a clampdown on all communication channels, imposing blackouts and strict curfews on critical outposts. His face appeared on official broadcasts, stern and unyielding. "We will not falter. The seeds of dissent will find no purchase," he asserted, trying to stem the tide of growing unrest. However, the crackdown only served to fuel the flames of rebellion further. Secret meetings were held in the dead of night, and whispers of joining the Trellis cause grew louder among the oppressed populations. Sympathizers within the Empire, some even in the military, began funneling information and resources to the rebels, bolstered by the resolve they saw on Trellis. On Trellis itself, the rebels grew bolder with each small victory. "They are stretched thin, reacting to shadows we cast," Kai noted, observing the erratic movements of Imperial forces. The resistance began reclaiming territories, setting up more permanent bases in areas once thought lost. As Imperial enforcers marched through cities and colonies to quell any signs of dissent, they were met with passive resistance. Crowds of silent protesters wearing symbols of Trellis, simple representations of its once lush landscapes and vibrant wildlife, now symbols of defiance. In the midst of this, Alara found herself treating more than just physical wounds. The psychological toll on both sides was immense, and her tent became a place of solace for those burdened with doubt. Her compassion did not go unnoticed, and it slowly eroded the staunch loyalty some held for the Empire. The battle for Trellis had evolved into a war of ideals, fought in the hearts and minds. The tide of public opinion against the Galactic Empire's actions continued to swell, reaching critical points on several key planets. Protests became a common sight, with participants waving banners emblazoned with the image of Trellis's devastated landscapes and the emblem of the resistance. This growing unrest shook the confidence of several high-ranking officials within the Empire's own administration, leading to clandestine meetings and whispered debates about the direction of their governance. In one significant instance, a group of Imperial senators, moved by the plight of Trellis and the unyielding push of the military, began drafting a proposal for peace talks. They argued that continuing the conflict would only lead to further degradation of the Empire's moral and political standing. "We risk everything if we continue on this path," Senator Thrin declared during a closed session, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. Meanwhile, Admiral Voss found himself increasingly isolated as the voices of dissent grew louder within his own ranks. His direct reports, once obedient and unflinching, now questioned his orders and the wisdom of their mission. Voss, feeling the foundations of his command erode, doubled down on his efforts to stamp out the resistance, not realizing that each aggressive act only hardened the resolve of those he sought to subdue. On Trellis, the resistance capitalized on this shifting landscape. Kai Arlen and Lynn Mara organized a series of covert operations aimed at further undermining the Empire's operational capabilities. Small teams infiltrated key facilities, not to destroy but to steal valuable intelligence and rescue prisoners of war, which included some of their own captured comrades. During one daring nighttime raid, Elara Nara's medical expertise proved crucial. She helped stabilize a critically wounded prisoner, a young pilot with vital information about the Empire's upcoming strategies. Once back at the Resistance base, the pilot, overcome with gratitude towards his rescuers, offered detailed schematics of the Empire's newest war machines. "This could change everything," Kai mused as he examined the documents, the dim light of the command tent casting long shadows over his focused face. He immediately set plans in motion to use this new intelligence, devising tactics that would turn the Empire's technological superiority into a disadvantage. Back in the Empire's capital, the movement for peace gained momentum. Leaked footage of the Trellis Resistance's humane treatment of prisoners contrasted sharply with the official narrative of the rebels as ruthless insurgents. This footage, coupled with the Senator's push for negotiation, led to a pivotal assembly where the motion for peace talks was put to a vote. Admiral Voss, summoned to defend his actions before the assembly, stood firm in his belief that only through total victory could stability be assured. "Show weakness now, and we invite chaos," he argued passionately, yet his words rang hollow against the growing chorus for peace. As the assembly debated, news arrived of another successful operation by the Trellis Resistance. They had managed to disable a key communications hub, causing widespread disruption to the Empire's command and control capabilities. The timing of this strike, coinciding with the Assembly's deliberations, provided stark evidence of the need for a new approach. Faced with mounting evidence of the conflict's futility and the moral imperative for change, the Assembly voted in favor of initiating peace talks. The decision was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every corner of the Empire and beyond, igniting celebrations among those who had long advocated for an end to the conflict. As word of the impending negotiations reached Trellis, Kai Arlen prepared his people, knowing that the real challenge lay ahead. Negotiating peace would require as much resilience and cunning as the war had. The rebels, now seen as legitimate belligerents, readied themselves to put down their arms and take up the mantle of diplomacy. The Galactic Empire, its once unshakable resolve shaken, faced as the day of the peace negotiations approached. Both the Galactic Empire and the Trellis Resistance prepared to trade the battlefield for the negotiating table. The venue chosen was a neutral space station, orbiting a desolate moon in the Cygnus sector, a sight distant from the prying eyes of the galaxy's major powers and media. Admiral Voss, though a warrior at heart, understood the gravity of his new role in these talks. He spent long hours with diplomats and strategists, learning the nuances of political negotiation. "Remember, every concession is a battleground," one advisor cautioned, emphasizing the need to maintain a position of strength without provoking further conflict. Kai Arlen, accompanied by Lynn Mara and Elara Nara, represented the resistance. Their journey to the space station was tense, aware of the potential for treachery. Lynn secured their communications and ensured their strategy remained confidential, while Elara prepared to speak on the humanitarian impacts of the war, hoping to sway the negotiations with a compelling narrative of suffering and resilience. Upon arrival, the station buzzed with a tense energy. Delegates from various non-aligned planets and organizations, invited as observers and mediators, filled the halls with quiet speculation about the outcome. The negotiations were not only a chance for peace on Trellis, but also a precedent-setting moment for how the Empire might handle future uprisings. The first session of talks began with formalities, each side laying out their primary concerns. The Empire demanded disarmament and integration of Trellis into its administrative framework, fearing a successful rebellion might inspire others. In contrast, Kai pushed for full sovereignty and reparations for the damage inflicted upon their world, emphasizing the right of his people to self-determination. The negotiations were arduous, stretching into hours of debate and discussion. Voss found himself often at odds with his own delegation, pressured by diplomats to offer more than he felt prudent. His military mindset clashed with the political realities, creating moments of intense frustration and revealing cracks in the Empire's unified front. Meanwhile, Kai and his team worked to leverage every piece of intelligence and diplomatic advice they had received. Lin Mara's expertise in data analysis allowed them to counter the Empire's proposals with hard facts, challenging exaggerated claims of rebel aggression and underlining the disproportionate response of the Imperial forces. Ilara took the floor to make a passionate appeal about the human cost of the war, presenting images and testimonials from those on the ground. Her presentation moved some of the neutral delegates, who began to advocate more strongly for substantial reparations and guarantees of non-aggression. As the days passed, the negotiations saw several breakdowns and recesses, with each side recalibrating their strategies. News of the ongoing talks spread throughout the galaxy, and public support for the Resistance's cause grew, putting additional pressure on the Empire to seek a peaceful resolution. An unexpected breakthrough came when a junior diplomat from the Empire, moved by Ilara's presentation, leaked documents detailing some of the Empire's more aggressive military strategies against civilian targets. The leak caused a scandal among the Assembly, forcing the Empire to soften its stance and return to the negotiating table with a more conciliatory approach. Faced with increasing political and public pressure, Admiral Voss reluctantly agreed to a series of concessions, including a significant degree of autonomy for Trellis and a substantial aid package to help rebuild the planet. In exchange, Kai agreed to a phased disarmament plan, ensuring that it would be tied to the fulfillment of the Empire's promises. As the final agreement was drafted, both sides knew that the true test of peace would come in its implementation. In the aftermath of the negotiations, both Trellis and the Galactic Empire faced the monumental task of implementing the terms agreed upon. The Resistance leaders returned to their planet, greeted as heroes by a population weary of conflict but hopeful for a new era of sovereignty and rebuilding. Kai Arlen, now recognized as the provisional leader of Trellis, organized councils across the planet to discuss the peace agreement and plan the future governance of Trellis. We must build a society that reflects our values and aspirations, one that will stand as a testament to what we've achieved through our struggle, Kai told the newly formed assembly, urging inclusivity and transparency in all decisions. Meanwhile, Admiral Voss faced a different challenge. Upon his return, he was met with skepticism and veiled hostility from certain factions within the Empire who viewed the concessions as a sign of weakness. His report to the High Command was tense, with demands for explanations and assurances that such a situation would not set a precedent for other rebellious territories. The disarmament process on Trellis was a complex affair. Under the watchful eyes of international observers, the Resistance gradually handed over their heavier weapons, while the Empire dismantled several of their military installations on and around the planet. This reciprocity was crucial, as it demonstrated to the Trellis population that the Empire was committed to upholding its end of the agreement. Ilara Nara focused her efforts on the reconstruction of the healthcare system, using funds from the reparations to rebuild hospitals and clinics destroyed during the war. Her dedication ensured that the physical and psychological scars of the conflict were addressed, helping to heal the divisions within the community. Lin Mara, on the other hand, was tasked with establishing a robust communication network for Trellis, designed to ensure that the planet could maintain its autonomy without isolation. She worked tirelessly, setting up secure lines of communication that could withstand external threats, ensuring Trellis would never again be caught off guard. As the months passed, the fragile peace held, but not without challenges. Incidents of violence occurred, spurred by splinter groups on both sides who were dissatisfied with the peace agreement. These groups occasionally clashed with peacekeeping forces, creating moments of tension that threatened to unravel the progress made. To address these challenges, Kai initiated a series of community engagement programs aiming to integrate former combatants into the new society. These programs included job training, education, and community service projects, which helped to redirect their energies and skills into constructive avenues. Admiral Voss, monitoring the situation from afar, found himself increasingly sidelined in the political arena, as the Empire's leadership took a more diplomatic approach in dealing with other planetary disputes, learning from the backlash of the Trellis situation. Voss spent his days preparing his memoirs, reflecting on his long career and the lessons learned from the conflict. Back on Trellis, as new buildings rose from the ruins and children returned to schools, the population began to embrace the possibilities of peace. Cultural exchanges and trade agreements flourished as neighboring planets and former adversaries sought to establish relations with the newly sovereign Trellis. Despite the progress, the road to a lasting peace was strewn with obstacles. Kai and his council remained vigilant, aware that each day without conflict was a step towards a more stable future, but also a day where old wounds could resurface. As Trellis celebrated its first year of peace with a planetary festival, featuring displays of cultural heritage and technological advancements, the community looked forward with a cautious optimism, understanding that true peace was not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice and mutual respect. As Trellis marked its second anniversary of peace, the transformations were tangible. Cities once marred by scars of war now thrived with new life, their skylines reshaped not only by new architecture, but by the renewed spirit of its people. Central to these celebrations was the unveiling of the Peace Monument in the capital's newly designated Unity Park, a structure designed by artists from various parts of the planet, symbolizing the collective journey of resilience and reconciliation. Kai Arlen stood before a gathering of citizens and dignitaries from across the galaxy, his presence a stark contrast to the battle-hardened leader of yesteryears. Now he was seen as a visionary peacemaker, his speeches resonating with hope and the importance of sustained effort towards maintaining peace. Today we stand as a beacon of what can be achieved when people choose unity over division, dialogue over conflict, he proclaimed, his voice echoing through the crowd. Ilara Nara, who had become a leading figure in public health on Trellis, received honors for her relentless dedication to rebuilding the healthcare infrastructure. Under her guidance, Trellis not only recovered, but became a center for medical innovation, attracting experts and students from various planets eager to learn and contribute to its programs. Lynn Mara, now head of Trellis's Communications Authority, had ensured that the planet remained at the forefront of technology and information security. Her efforts to keep Trellis connected and secure had been vital in establishing the planet's sovereignty and its ability to stand as an equal in interstellar affairs. Admiral Voss, retired and somewhat estranged from the current military command, attended the ceremony at Kai's personal invitation. His memoirs, recently published, offered a candid look at the conflict from his perspective, providing insights into the complexities of leadership in times of war. His presence at the ceremony was a testament to the reconciliation efforts, acknowledging his role in the history that led to peace. As the celebrations continued, a series of panels and discussions took place, involving thinkers, leaders, and citizens discussing the future. Topics ranged from sustainable development to expanding democratic governance, reflecting the broad aspirations of a society eager to look forward, while remembering the lessons of its past. In the backdrop of these events, Trellis hosted its first Interstellar Peace Symposium, attracting delegates interested in replicating its peace model in other conflict zones. Kai and his team shared their experiences, emphasizing the importance of grassroots involvement in peace-building processes and the need for inclusive governance. However, the peace was not without its guardians. Reports of minor skirmishes on the borders and political maneuvering by remnants of the old Imperial factions served as reminders of the fragility of peace. Trellis maintained a vigilant yet open stance, balancing security concerns with ongoing diplomatic outreach. As the sun set on the anniversary celebrations, the lights of Unity Park illuminated a series of plaques around the Peace Monument, each engraved with the names of those who had lost their lives during the conflict. It was a solemn reminder of the cost of peace and the importance of safeguarding it for future generations. The final day concluded with a global broadcast by Kai Arlen, where he announced the establishment of the Trellis Peace Institute, dedicated to the study and promotion of peace and conflict resolution strategies worldwide. Let our planet be not only a symbol of peace, but also a source of the knowledge